when I was 17, I wrote a suicide letter, and it got found out by the school therapist one day, and they had to call the suicide crisis people. And I was taken away, going to the hospital, and I mean, they were going to strip me. I wasn't going to be able to go home. They literally put me in like this, what felt like a prison.
All right, so you hear things about witnessing or a testimony and what that means in current day. I mean, you'll see those words all throughout the Bible. What that means in current day is really about sharing your story, and many times your conversion story. And that is what Mac is here to do today. This is the Average Christian 2.0. My name is Zach. This is Mac. No, that's not a new funky title we came up with. So Mac wanted to share his story, and we thought we would give him the platform with which to do it. So we're going to kind of do this interview style. And it's been about 5 months since you obeyed the gospel.
Yes.
All right, that is a term I used that recently with somebody that I was commenting back and forth with. Obey the gospel is a term found in the Bible. It's not just something we use, but First Peter and various other places use that anyhow. So this is all about you, man, and sharing. Your idea was to help other people by seeing where you came from, what the Lord has done for you, and then hopefully that will inspire them or at least give them some hope.
Yes, sir.
All right. So let's get into it. Max got his questions already. I'm just going to kind of go through these and set it up while he hits it out of the park. So when you're talking about your testimony, there is the idea of who you were before Jesus, how you came to him, because it is a process, and then what life has been like after that. So in starting out, what about your life before Christ will relate to most of the non-Christians that you either know or that might be watching this?
Just seeking approval and attention. I was getting involved in anything, as in a popularity contest or anything really. Didn't really have much figured out. And growing up, especially in high school, everything was kind of like a experimental stage and like a developmental stage, and finding out what I was going to be as a person, who I am, and stuff like that. Um, but most of it was just all lust driven for me, and not just sexual lust, but craving attention and stuff like that can be considered lust, and lusting for power and stuff like that. Um, that for me would be the most relatable part for people who are non-Christians.
The desire part of it, some people, well, the Bible sometimes refers to it as coveting, just wanting out of pure greed, whether it's greed for, money gain or popularity, whatever the case is. So, at least enough about me to know that I understand where you're coming from about needing attention and approval, and still battle with that. Mac is, by the way, what are you, 20?
Yeah.
20 years old. Okay. I know he's in his first year at college. Man, I'm sorry. I'm bombing out on all the details here. But I know first year of college, gone to ETSU, moved out of the house. So, I mean, you're fresh out of a difficult part of life, which is high school. Middle school's hard for that matter, high school. And during all that, trying to find your identity. So you're hoping to relate to people who are basically in need, trying to find approval, trying to find out who they are, how they fit in, all the above.
Right.
Gotcha. The before Christ, then, what was your life about? What did your life revolve around? What gave you satisfaction? What were you about?
Very self-centered, very self-centered, and I got my satisfaction from lust. It was strictly That's the only thing that satisfied me. With my medical condition and like having congenital heart block, have had 6 heart surgeries. I can't get into drinking or smoking or stuff like that, that stuff would affect my physical health and kill me.
Right.
So, I mean, the replacement for that was sexual lust.
Okay.
That was where I found my satisfaction. And it was this, I was so self centered with it and just really became perverted through it.
Was that right?
And I'm not just talking like sexually speaking, but also like as a person. I mean, I I became like almost a pathological liar in high school. I went through like a toxic relationship to where for the most part, I mean, I was the toxic one in that relationship. I I lied almost every day, lied to people close to me, and it just didn't matter at that point. I mean, and I almost tried to play the victim card several times and knew I would just twist things just to get my way.
Gotcha. Man, that lion creeps in, doesn't it? I mean, once you start, it just becomes, it feels like it's easier, but it makes a mess out of your life, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're just digging a hole.
Exactly. So you had some tough, at least one really tough relationship, right? That I know about that really, but it's funny how you're not blaming the other person. Like when you say toxic relationship, a lot of people would say, well, it's the person that I was with and they were toxic. But you're saying, no, it was probably me more so than anything else.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, yeah, it takes two, people in a relationship. But for what she did wrong, I mean, it doesn't really matter to me, honestly. I mean, to me, he, I, I'd rather take the blame for all that and take blame for where I'm wrong at. Because honestly, what she did wrong or whatever, it's not going to change me. It's, me taking ownership of my actions and having to make that change and be assertive in that.
A question came to mind that we hadn't previously talked about, but given what you just said, does taking responsibility feel like the antidote for that victim mentality?
Yes.
Gotcha.
And that, I mean, it only takes one time. One
How do you
time.
mean?
It only takes for you to tell the truth and take ownership when you're wrong one time to where it grows into a habit. Just like when you lie, the more you lie,
Right.
first time you take ownership, the more you're going to do it with just anything, and it becomes easier to where, I mean, you have that doubt in your head to where you're lying and you don't want to take that ownership, because you're like, well, it'd be better if this person didn't find this out or blah blah blah, because I don't want to hurt their feelings or whatever like that. But in all reality, I mean, that's just a voice in your head, that's making you dig a bigger hole for yourself.
Right. I don't know. I had another couple follow up questions, but I was thinking about when you were in the middle of that, you know, before Christ and before you came to some realizations, did you feel like the victim then?
No, everything, everything, like literally everything that's happened to me is because of choices I've made for the most part. Obviously, some things that have happened to me, I can't help
Like
other
your heart
people's.
condition?
Yes, I can't help other choices like that. But for the most part, it's been off of choices I've made and off of groups I've been involved with. My ex, she was bisexual and she was involved in the LGBTQ community. And I got involved through that, through being connected to her. And I'm already dealing with lust at that time. And at this time, in like, I was 16 in high school, and I I didn't want any type of relationship with God. Actually, freshman year is when I stopped going to church, stopped wanting God because I grew up, my family went to church and all that stuff, but it was this all lovey-dovey, you have God in your life, things will be perfect, nothing bad happens kind of thing.
Right.
And so when bad things started and like stuff hit the fan, I pointed the finger right at God. I didn't point it at me. I didn't bother to look anywhere else but him. And I just said, well, I actually like started growing so much resentment and hate for God. I didn't want anything to do with him. And at that time too, my lust and I was becoming more perverted as a person. So all the wrong things were just going on at this time to lead me down a path that I would have had. You would have told me what would have happened to me. I don't. I wouldn't have even believed half the stuff that would you would have told me would have happened to me because of that. And the more because the thing about lust and the more perverted I got with the thing with perversion, everything becomes open on the table. And it's not just pornography, it means like everything.
Right.
And
What was once taboo is now
yeah,
a possibility.
and that's what I learned about like the LGBTQ when I was involved in it. I I became bisexual and was fully involved in that community at the age of 17 all the way through 18, kind of got out of it around 19 years old. But I was at one point, I mean, considering becoming transgender, and I was cross dressing. I would dress like a woman, talk like a woman, try to act like a woman, and it was just so. At the time, I mean, I didn't look at it this way because at the time, I just didn't care.
Let me ask
And
you this real quick. Did you feel a sense of belonging when you had a cause, when you had a group to be around? I mean, you're trying to find your identity. Now you got this group and you got sort of not a cause, but you've got I don't know, I guess more of a purpose, what felt like a purpose.
I didn't find any of that. What I found was a sense of a bunch of I don't knows and lost.
Okay. So it didn't really provide much of anything.
No, other than curiosity
Okay.
and made me start questioning things a lot more, which actually, in a spiritual sense, did so much for me. Which, at the same time, if you would have told me back then that asking questions would have helped me and would brought me to where I'm at now, I wouldn't have believed you. But
Because you thought being faithful or a Christian was all about having answers instead of asking questions. Is that what you're saying?
yes,
I got you. Makes sense. I don't think people, not to dive too much because I want to get into some more of these questions, but I don't think people like my age, older, even some younger, I don't think we know how confusing it is now for young people as far as identity and all this stuff that you were battling through. I don't think we understand. Everything was a lot more cut and dry. Gender was cut and dry when we were. I'm talking in the mid '90s when I graduated high school. Me and Clayton, we didn't have these kind of questions, and we didn't have adults throwing stuff in our face saying everything's up in the air. So add all that into you trying to figure out who you are and trying to fit in, and with this girl who had influence of some sort over you, right? So
right.
when does all this stuff begin to fall apart and start letting you down, and you realize this ain't it?
Well, when I was 18,
Okay.
I was like fully at that time. I was like fully considering becoming transgender. And did research into it, found out the whole process of it. It's not just a surgery. You have to go through like 3 different therapists to get cleared, and then you have to go on hormones for a year. And the hormones, that's the thing that does it. It's not like, oh, you go to surgery and it's like you're boom, you're a woman now. Like no, the hormones mentally change you. You grow breasts and all this stuff, and it messes people up. It really does. It led to a bunch of bad things, and that's what kind of made me question. I was like, well, this might not be worth it. And not just that, I was looking at the way I was being treated and what the friends that I had in that community, what were they really there for? And it was all sex driven, and all I got from it was I was degraded, humiliated, and
By
lied.
those in that group?
Yes,
'Cause I thought it was all
yes,
about tolerance and
yes.
acceptance.
I was degraded from people in the LGBTQ. I was never degraded by someone of faith, a Christian, some someone so called homophobic. I've never heard anything bad being said to me at that time. It was strictly from that community. I had homosexual men who were telling me, "Oh, well, you don't want to just tell everyone you're gay, so you rather dress up as a woman. You're a disgrace to this community." You have trans women coming at me saying, "Oh, well, you're a disgrace to this community because you just don't want to make the commitment to being a woman or such and
So you
such."
couldn't win.
No, you couldn't win. And then, I mean, there's no, and I found out there's no love there. I mean, you could say like, "Oh yeah, well, I feel this way to a person," but it's not the same.
You said when you're 18, how else were you let down in life as far as like you've been doing things your way? A lot of, and you use the word lust. That can apply to sex. I think every time we hear the word lust,
Yeah.
we automatically think sex. But lust is, biblically speaking, is desire.
Yeah.
You can want a lot of things,
Yep.
but you're basically just about you, what you want to do. And so this community, this aspect of life that you thought you were going to chase down, this relationship, that stuff started to let you down, but you went downhill pretty badly, right? I mean, you got to a pretty dark place.
Right. It was during that relationship to where I started having suicidal thoughts to where but I've had suicidal thoughts before. Just they weren't magnified until high school, until that relationship. But it was after my parents got divorced. I mean, I started becoming depressed. I wouldn't say I had depression because that's like actually like diagnosis and stuff like that.
Right,
I've
just
never been
down, struggling.
diagnosed by a doctor saying that I've had depression or like I have to do medicine for it. But I was down and depressed, and I wrote when I was 17. I wrote a suicide letter, and it got found out by the school therapist one day, and they had to call the suicide crisis people. And I was taken away, going to the hospital, and I mean, they were going to strip me. I wasn't going to be able to go home. They literally put me in like this, what felt like a prison suit or like insane suit. And I was going to be taken away my phone. I was only going to be allowed to call my family once a week, and they were going to bring therapists in to make sure I was good to go and stuff like that. I literally had to like beg for them to let me go because I was like, I don't want to lose my family or be taken away from them. I mean, it's already big, like hard enough for me because when they call the suicide crisis people, they call your family too. And my family found out that way. So, I mean, I had to like beg and plead for like a safety plan. I got let go, thankfully. Um, and that was definitely kind of a wake up call, but obviously not a big wake up call enough. It was definitely a wake up call for me that realizing how valuable time is and what I'm investing my time in.
Gotcha. All right, that's all the set the table fairly well to show what your life was like. I mean, you've known Evan since what grade were y'all in when y'all first met?
Third grade.
Evan's my oldest son, and y'all have been friends since third grade. I was thinking back, like when you were saying you couldn't tell me, I knew you when you were a fifth and sixth grader. And yeah, life changes a lot. You went down the selfish path into things you probably never thought. Um, real quick, let me address this real quick before we move on to hearing about the gospel and what happened then. We're hearing about Jesus. Um, you've had people tell you that if you make a video, give a testimony, whatever the case is, and you're blatantly open like you have been about stuff, they've told you don't do it.
I've had
It'll
people tell me
destroy you.
that's career ending.
Career ending.
Like for what I wanted to do and what I want to do, that employer may look at it and be like, "Whoa, this isn't a good look," and stuff like that. And obviously, it's some people have told me it might affect things like my personal image or like my music and stuff like that. But to me, I don't really care about any of that stuff. I mean, because what people have to say doesn't really matter to me. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not doing this for them or their validation.
Which is a freedom from the way you used to think, isn't
Yep.
it? About trying to please and make sure. So you heard the gospel when, and what was your initial reaction? What was your initial response when you heard about Jesus, about the truth?
Well, when I was 18, I started questioning because I was like, well, obviously, I'm not getting what I'm needing to get out of what I'm doing now. It's not, doesn't make me feel good. And number one thing it didn't make me feel was complete. It always felt like I've always wanted more. And that's just what lust is this I'm never going to be filled. I'm always going to be wanting and wanting more, like to where I'll never be satisfied. And I just was like, I just started questioning God, and I was like, well, you know what? Let me look into it. Let me go and ask. So I started coming back to church, but I was in and out at the time that I was coming back. I was 18. I was in and out at your church
Right.
to where I either come there, I'd be gone for a couple weeks, or gone for a few months, or come back.
I
Like, and
remember the questions. I
yep,
remember here and there.
and like I asked them the questions I asked. I was like, well, why would a God who created everything make a tree full of sin? Basically, that was my number one question. And just because I learned so much, the number one thing that like opened my eyes to it, and I was like, whoa, was literally looking at God as like a parental relationship,
Okay. Okay.
not as like I'm doing stuff for him, not because I fear that he's going to whip me or stuff like that or punish me, but out of love and respect. And I asked all these questions about God, but then again, I never once looked at Adam and Eve as human, basically, because I'm like, well, they should have basically been better. Well, if they didn't make this choice, then sin would have been let into the world because, I mean, at the time of Adam and Eve, the world was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And and God told them what not to do. And it's just like, and then I found out, like, a lot of people question, well, then why give Adam and Eve free will? Because basically that's God setting us up and all this stuff.
Right. It's God's fault that He gave us the
But
possibility.
that's a sign of respect. And I mean, and at the end of the day, Adam and Eve are human. And it made me look at my mistakes. I can't be mad at Adam and Eve for what they did. Yeah, sin got let into the world, and it's been downhill ever since here. And it's been a
Right.
imperfect world, and things aren't getting better. And a lot of times maybe I think about Adam and Eve, and I'm just like, man, you guys really messed it up. But like, you guys literally are the antithesis of you guys
Right.
have one job.
Right. That's
So
right. Like the field goal kicker.
yeah,
You had one job.
yeah.
Don't eat that fruit. Yeah, but
But
you went from that victim thinking of why did they do this? Why did God do this? To wait a second. It is a sign of respect to be given freedom. It's also a part of love. You have to have the choice to love, or it's not that. You can't be made to love, or it ceases to be that.
well, not just that. I mean, I don't know. I can't. I don't know. There's a lot of things I don't know about God. Like for example, like I don't know if Jesus was pre-planned. Like he just knew Adam and Eve would mess up or something. But I do know when they did, right then and there, Jesus was coming,
Oh yeah.
and it was like because God knew what they did and what was going to happen and everything. The only way for us to be saved because he loves us is for him to give his only devoted son to come down here and die for us. And Jesus, I mean, he came here. I mean, he didn't come here and save us with like a shining armor. He didn't have a sword or a shield.
No, he came regular,
Yep.
and you had to find him, had to look for him, you had to want him. But he came for everybody, and that plan, like you said, in the garden, while God's talking to Satan, he gives the promise, as we call it the seed promise, but he gives the promise of the seed coming from a woman to come and crush him, essentially. And so it was there that he gave at least the first inkling of this plan that had been put in place.
And then another thing too. what I'll tell you this, another thing that opened my eyes big was I had a lot of questions about God, but never questioned or never thought about the other power at work, which is the devil.
Oh,
Like to where he was never even thought about the devil. It's like I still even that time I didn't want nothing to do with God. I believed God was real. I believed all this stuff. I just hated him. But I never if you would have asked me anything about the devil, I would have looked at you like he wasn't even real or something like that. And it was like I was in the dark and it's like someone turned the light switch on and I was just engulfed in a house that was on fire and didn't even know it. And it was like crazy because I was like, the devil is really good at lying and deceiving to where I was like walking blind to
right.
what it felt like.
Absolutely, where you
And
hadn't even considered him as
yeah,
the big part of the
and
problem.
I'll say the worst thing too, which I'm lucky this didn't because it almost did. It almost stopped me right then and there from coming back to church. Was at that same day I was having those questions for you. Later that night, I go out and I was being stupid. I go out because I'm still like involved in that community and everything. I go out um, at like 2 a.m. to this guy's house, and I ended up um, getting raped that night by a man. And like I remember is I was at that time. Feeling suicidal was at a all time low. But when that happened, it's like part of me died, and like I remember. I called Evan up at like 4 a.m. He rode with me in the car for like 2 hours, and I was like bawling. And I looked like a deer in headlights, and just like, and I was like, and it was right then it kind of made me now to where I realized like I'm gonna keep going, like no matter what. That was like probably the biggest haymaker that was thrown at me at that time because I wasn't really faithful at that time. I was questioning it and getting involved. And like I was like right then and there, I was like, am I coming back or not? And it's like, well, no, I need to come back. And I wasn't in need of coming back to get my life or like, oh well, I need to get a better life. It was like I'm literally broken and I need healing. And the only person I know who could heal me is God. And I've started coming to church consistently, learning more. And I was still, I was shooken up, but most people wouldn't even know. And like, except for the people close to me. People who are close to me and my family have literally just found out about this. And this happened like 2 years ago. And it's the main reason that I got back into the church, like into where I've been wanting to be fully committed, learning about God and everything.
Yeah, you hadn't even obeyed the gospel at that point. It
No,
was still a curiosity. I mean, you
no.
still hadn't even done become a Christian, for the lack of a better, gotten saved, and um, but still there was that connection. There was a sense of faith that started to grow. I guess after that was your rock bottom. I'll tell you, man. I know that may make a lot of people uncomfortable hearing that, but it takes guts because it's not something that anybody plans for. I have no way to relate to that. I mean, I have no way to say, I understand how you feel, none of that. But I can only imagine the darkness. I can only imagine fear. I can't even put the adjectives to it. So you're saying that is your down in the dirt worst moment. And from there, it was either we're going to do this with God or
Yep. It took me to be at my at rock bottom to be open to my greatest change.
that was your rock bottom. So, with that in mind, having gone through and suffered all that, Those were the final struggles that went through your mind right before you accepted him and decided, okay, God is going to be it. There's nothing else, nobody else, nothing else that's going to help me. And that was what your final decision. And from there it was
Yep.
uphill.
Yep.
All right. Now we get into more of the good part of the story. I really do hate that all that happened. And it's interesting to me too, coming from that selfish, victimized mentality, that you would come on here and share that and have no interest in going to find that person who did it to you and make them pay. I've never, you know, I haven't heard you talk about looking for anybody or looking for anybody to pay,
Nope.
just taking responsibility. So how's your life different now? I mean, that's probably the best way to ask it.
I have more substance. More so, I have a rock in my life to where I not only know my purpose, but know what I'm supposed to be as a person. And through God, without being self centered, like nothing to me is self centered about God and me. It's all about putting others on a pedestal and serving. And that life, I mean, fills me up more than anything that I was chasing to like what I wanted to do as a career, like all that stuff. I mean, especially at a young age, it's kind of all self-centered at
Oh
this
yeah.
point, especially in college, because you're supposed to figure out what you're going to do
What you want to do for
and all
your
this
money
stuff.
and your, yeah.
But I mean, to me, that doesn't matter because I mean, this life here doesn't really matter. I mean, it matters in terms of like living through Christ, yes, but like the thing is like, oh, if I get the job I want, like that's not going to matter to when I'm in heaven for eternity, because this is going to seem like so small, so little, and I have that foundation that I didn't have, and that acceptance that I never could find in the place that said they were about love and acceptance, but the place where I found love and acceptance was at church. Now, I'm lucky that our church, you know, goes off the gospel. Not every church does that, you know.
No, there's a lot of people that claim Jesus, but
Yeah,
don't follow the truth, right?
and but if you're going off the gospel and you're going off the word, then yes, that's love and acceptance. And Jesus loves everyone. God wants everyone, but not everyone wants God. And you can't live a life, you know, that basically says, I don't want God, and then expect to have God in your life. I mean,
For all the benefits of what
yes,
God gives you.
I turned my back on God, but God never turned his back on me. And God he never left me when I cursed and hated him. It was just, I had my back turned. I was looking the opposite way. And like to where I looked in the mirror and I mean, I hated God so much. Sometimes I thought I saw the devil in my reflection. And just learning what I've learned so far because I'm an infant in my faith, honestly. I'm like 3 chapters in the Bible, and just literally
Oh, you
it's
say
just
you're an infant in your faith. Yeah, you're a
yes,
baby in Christ. Right.
yes.
Right.
And, I mean, it's been 5 months since I've been baptized, and I remember when I got baptized, I was so happy. Oh, man. I was so happy, but, man, then one thing I kinda brushed under the rug was when you and Evan told me, it's like, "Yeah, it's gonna be some up and downs." I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah, you gotta put your gloves on now. The
no, it's
devil's
not."
really coming for you.
No, I didn't see,
Right.
like, I didn't know, like, I was like, "Nah, no way." And this is a funny story because, like, I still struggle with lust. Sometimes I don't, and I'm honest about it. Sometimes I don't struggle with sin, but I'm honest and I live a life of confession and repentance.
Yeah, you do. I get it.
And to me, that's more so relieving and such a weight off my shoulders. It's not even funny.
Some people don't understand that though,
Yes.
right?
You know,
They're like, why would you tell your business like that? Like, you don't understand.
I'm I'm confessing to God for forgiveness, but I'm confessing openly to others for healing. And I need healing for like all those years. And I've received like so much healing. in just a little time.
Right.
And like, I'm definitely, it's crazy because I told you earlier in the week how anxious I was feeling about doing all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And now I came in here, you asked me how I was doing, I was stoked.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah, you said excited, and I was like, all right, well, cool.
and I'm stoked right now.
Well, good. You see me, man, but this is all of what the Lord has done for you.
Yep.
Other specific characteristics that have changed, like, I mean, I can tell you what I see in you, and I may do some of that, but other specific things that have changed about you.
I'm not self-centered.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say I'm not confident. A lot of people want like use this self-care and everything. Oh, you need self-esteem and everything, but really I think everyone needs God esteem.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Well put.
putting others on a pedestal or above you, putting everyone above you shouldn't be looked at as a bad thing. Because the way I look at it, it's harder to disrespect someone when you put everyone above you. It's harder to talk bad about people when they're all above you and you see it. Not
You don't
putting
insult
me.
people you respect.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I'm beating myself up or I'm at, the worst human being of all time or anything like that. I'm confident, but I'm got my confidence through God and through what God wants of me and who God wants me to be. I'm confident because God made me.
And how he values you.
Yes.
You
God,
have value now, real value, because God gave it to you,
yes,
not
and that's
because
what
you earned it. Or
that's the number one thing I always think about is like where I'm like, dang, I really must have insulted God when I was like basically in that time when I was in the LGBTQ. I must have really insulted him by saying, God, you could have made me different. You could have made me better. You should have made me a woman. You should have made me this, this, and this. And it's just now I'm seeing what God really made me to be. And it's like, well, God, you actually made me perfect.
mm-hmm.
And you made me the perfect version of me. And I just have taken it for granted.
It's funny too. Jesus said a lot when he said the second greatest commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. And it took me a long time to learn is that you got to love you in order to love the other person. But you find that through God, and it's all reciprocal. You find a value to yourself, an appreciation for self that's healthy through the eyes of God, and that allows you to go out and love other people the same way and really give to other people instead of just being so self-absorbed.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There was a couple other things on here. All right, you've hinted at it. Let's just ask it point blank. What do you live for now? What motivates you?
Living a life through Christ.
Okay,
And
such as like specifically.
living through God, but finding out more about Him and His will and what He wants me to do, and how every day I could do like what I can do for Him, or just carry Him with me in everything that I do. Not just what can I do for Him, but like when I go in to work, for example, I take that as which has helped me the last few weeks because I always working a 9 to 5. Everyone loves complaining about 9 to 5s and everything, but that's just any job. You can complain or find stuff about it, but that's not going to do me any good. But when I start thinking about God at work and this being like, okay, how can I show my light here at work? How can I show that I'm a Christian without saying I'm a Christian, basically? Because not everyone, especially if you don't know God, you're not going to be like, oh yeah, that guy right there, he looks like a Christian. Like, or I can tell who a Christian is too. But I want people to question the way I live, because if anything, a number one thing people should take out of this is like questioning God brought me closer to Him. And like, if people can question my lifestyle and the way I'm living, the way I'm carrying myself, maybe then that can make them lead to questioning God and finding out more about God if they don't know.
It's interesting that you're talking about this. I didn't even plan it this way. The video that comes out tomorrow is about questioning God and how it can be valuable. So this one will probably release. I don't know when it'll release, but soon after, and they'll be sort of back to back. But it's interesting. You have to question in order to figure out. That's one of the things that's I'll speak on from my perspective for a minute. That's one of the things that's difficult when you grow up around it. And I find a lot of people that I've grown up with or around or known for years, and they've gotten bored with the Lord. I mean for that to rhyme that much. They gotten bored with Jesus. They've gotten bored with church because they never really questioned. They sort of had their faith handed to them on a platter, and they didn't really ask any questions. Or some of them did, and people shot them down and didn't want to hear about it. And so they haven't developed their own sense. They may not have hit rock bottom like you have, and they haven't developed their own sense of faith and appreciation. And it's just kind of, what we do. We go to church and blah, 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 blah. You have a real vibrancy and fire about you that is somewhat attributed to your past experiences that help you appreciate what you have now.
Well, I think this is so ironic because I see it so much with young Christians to where, especially young Christians who grow up in church.
Right?
I mean, I kind of grew up in church, but really, I didn't know anything,
It wasn't a big part of your life.
No. But like, a lot of people leave the church and everything, like, because of bad things that happened in their life. Like, that's what made me hate God, was because of bad things that happened in my life. But those same bad things that happened in my life made me come back to God because of questioning about them. And it's funny because, a lot of people you see who come to God are because bad things happen to them, or like they hit that rock bottom, they start questioning. Or then you see the exact opposite for the people who are in church, who are supposed to be faithful and all this stuff, who have bad things going on in their life, who lose faith and they leave. And I just think, because I've been on both sides of that now, and it's just, I have so much understanding for that and appreciation for that, because to me, when I see a brethren, losing faith over bad stuff happening, that's where I need to be like, set the example and tell them, just stay strong, keep the good fight.
Yeah, these bad things, quote unquote, are actually, they serve a good purpose. They make you better. They make you stronger. They give you, they're actually opportunities. It's just difficult to see that for most all of us.
Any Christian who's going through bad things, please read Job. Read Job.
Oh yeah,
read Job.
Yeah.
That's all I gotta say.
And then really try to imagine what it was like to be in Job's.
And
now, that you're not perfect. The way I was going to ask this last question, that your life is not perfect. Everything hasn't been, like you said earlier, that these people that are out preaching Jesus and saying that you come to God and everything's going to be fixed, are just flat lying to people.
Yes.
So not everything's fixed. You're talking about being an infant in Christ, which means you got a lot to learn, a lot of ways to grow, and so it's not perfect. But how does knowing Christ help you deal with that fact that life isn't perfect, that there's still more to accomplish and so forth?
Because it gives me hope.
Okay.
Because I know, and I've had bad things happen since I've been baptized, but the difference is through confession and repentance, to where I don't have to worry about it, and I really don't stress about it, and I actually expect bad things, and I plan for the worst. So like I've already been through bad stuff, so like going through bad stuff in a world that's not necessarily good. I'm not expecting,
the days are evil.
Yeah, I'm not expecting things to get better, but I'm prepared, and just, it's more so now, like, mentally preparing myself for spiritual warfare every day, to where I let my guard down, and it's just, that's where I, give in now, is where I let my guard down mentally and stuff like that, and not staying consistent or not staying strong. But, when that happens and I let bad things happen, or they just happen, I have God there as my rock and hope, because I know, I'm going to be with him. And the worst thing that's going to happen to me here, or that can happen to me here, is I die. But if I die living through him, I'm good. I'm beyond good. And,
right. It's perfect.
Kill
me.
I know kill me. crazy Christian people talking about dying
That's
all the time.
right. Bunch of freaks. What's wrong with you? No, man. Look. I'll give you a couple minutes here, or a minute or two, to if you want to wrap up or sum up. But you've shared a whole lot. There's probably a lot of people with a lot of questions, and they can find you. I mean, you don't mind me giving your last name, right?
No, I don't mind.
You're not too worried. Mac Carraway. That's Carraway, right?
Right.
So they can find you on Facebook. They can find you on Instagram. It's funny too because you've been editing music for a while, and I remember the music you were editing when you were still trying to figure yourself out, and it was just it's like everything else, full of cussing and all that. Now you're like, nah, I'm not doing that anymore. So they can find your, your editing stuff as well, but they can contact you and ask you, I'm sure.
Right.
And say, hey, and I hope that that people they can get to us through the average Christian. We can pass the message on, whatever the case.
For sure.
But one of the things I was going to say before I give you the last little bit was that I probably always remember, like, we have the tradition, if you're not in a church group like ours, a tradition of having an invitation song. And so people will, as we commonly say, come forward, and what they'll do is confess, or they'll just say, hey, I'm struggling, or whatever else. And Mag does that a lot, which is odd for a lot of Christians, because they're like, well, what's wrong with him? You're a freak if you go to the front pew and tell people that you're struggling. Mag does it a lot, and I love it because he sits down, and I'm used to it now, but when you first did it, you'd be like, I'm not struggling. I'd be like, well, what are you doing here? And what you mean is, I'm not even fighting. I'm not even trying right now. I'm just I let my guard down, and I need to fight again.
Yep.
And so I know you've been a real, I hate to use the word inspiration. It sounds so corny, but you've been a shot in the arm, man. I mean, for Evan, you've been a big boost for him. There's a friendship that's rekindled there. It's sort of waned over the years, but it's now back because you both have the Lord as your first priority. And even in our small group, it makes a difference, big difference to have you around. So I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you sharing all this and having the guts to do it, and sharing it with everybody else. So what do you want to close with? Any final words of wisdom?
I don't know. I don't have that much wisdom from a 20-year-old.
Yeah. That's wisdom in and of itself.
That's more of an elder thing to say.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, man, anything else you wanted to say before we're done?
I don't got anything else.
Well, I appreciate it, man. It's good to have you on, and we'll do this again.
For sure.
All right, brother. All right. This is, let me finish out by saying, sorry, I was going to say real quick, this is the Average Christian 2.0, and I wanted to thank you guys for being here. Again, thank Mac, and I wanted to close out this video by saying we appreciate you watching on YouTube. You can subscribe to this channel. We hope to be doing more of these conversations, but you can hit the link to subscribe. You can also check out recent videos, the ones that YouTube recommends by what you see on the screen. To our podcast listeners, thank you for listening as well. Please help us out by subscribing, rating, and reviewing. And everybody, it helps not just us, but it helps other people if you'll share this content.